This is Identity at the Center.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Oh, not so bad yourself?
Good. Guess what? I did something today that you could never do.
I mean, there's so many things I can't do. you have to
but
be more
this
specific.
one it should be within your power. So I received my iPad today,
Okay.
a couple hours ago, and I have not opened the box yet.
Well, I question all your priorities. If you get a box, you open it. That's like, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be an iPad. It could be, a thing of chapstick. You open the box when it comes in. I don't know how you just let it sit there. You're an animal, dude.
Yeah, especially brand new technology. So, but I'm excited after the call. I'm planning on cutting into it and playing for hours on end.
Have you ever had an iPad before? Is this your first iPad?
This is my first iPad.
Wow, 2025. Congratulations.
Yeah, and it's the latest and greatest, which is even more unlike me.
Well,
I'm like, oh, great, the iPhone 17 came out. It's time to get the 16.
Well, yeah, I'm expecting to get text from you later. Like, okay, how do I do this? How do I set this up? Blah, blah, blah.
Turn it on.
It's a cool little device, with the exception of that stupid Apple commercial of that little girl saying, "What's a computer?" Like, oh, a very punchable face on that girl, unfortunately.
Wow. cut that out of the podcast.
Just so annoying. Maybe that's just me being old and decrepit, but this little, I don't know, she must have been like 13, 14, and she kind of has this haughty, "What's a computer?" You know what a computer is.
Boomer.
Yeah, right. Okay. What else we got? Hit me.
No, I'm excited for conferences, but I did want to throw in one other thing, which is we kind of talked about what the letter note question is. I'm really excited to jump in on that. That is like, now we're getting to Jim territory, something where I can actually add value. So I'm excited about that. And so for those who don't know, who never stuck around till the end, we always end every show with a later note. And it's just the idea that kind of humanizes Jeff and I and our guests. And we pick a topic that's not identity related. And we talk about it for a couple of minutes. I think if you're not interested in that, go ahead and drop off. If you can't wait to hear it, feel free to fast forward toward the end.
Well, I mean, don't drop off. Just turn the volume down and go somewhere else, do something. But I call that
like
and
me
subscribe,
time, right?
Yeah, that's like, that's a perfect opportunity to hit the like and subscribe button. That's like me time. Like, I like to have conversations about a whole bunch of different things, and we usually try to pick something that's kind of fun and, kind of joke around a little bit and maybe tease each other or find out something new, whatever it may be. I can tell you right now, I'm not going to be able to add any value to this later note. So I'm going to be relying on both you and our guests.
Exactly. I know it's not in your wheelhouse, but I was going to bring up also, by the time this episode drops, it'll be probably the week of Gartner. So we're already starting to think about the 2026 calendar. In the US, we've got Identiverse. In Europe, we've got EIC. Now, by saying in US and in Europe doesn't mean you have to live there to only go to those conferences. I actually highly recommend folks from Europe go to Identiverse and vice versa. Folks from North America, US, go to EIC because you learn so much, get so much new perspective.
Yeah, we had a really good time. It was our first time going to Berlin earlier this year, 2025, as we record this. And we're so excited to do it again. So we've kind of partnered up with Cooper Cole and the EIC folks. So we've got discount codes. So look, I get it. Going across the pond, at least for the US, is sometimes pretty expensive. So we've got codes on our website. So if you go to the idacpodcast.com, just scroll down. All of our active discounts are there. But you'll see one for EIC. So we've got 25% off IDAC 25MKO. It's been a while since we read like a discount code. For a while there, we had like 8 or 9 of them going at once. It was like, all right, we'll do an entire episode just reading codes. So now we just direct people, go to the website. Codes are there. We're looking forward to it. You and I are going to be there, Jim. And trying to, recreate the magic of 2025 there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, even if, obviously it was a great conference, but it was also great being in Berlin and going on, we went on that river dinner cruise the one night and got to kind of have a canal ride. I thought it was just so cool. It's like are memories for a lifetime.
It was fun. I think I sat there with Enrique and a couple other folks, just kind of chatting. I didn't actually go outside the entire course. We were just sitting at a table, just chatting about this, that, the other thing. So it was a fun time. It was good times. Like I said, looking forward to it. And I'm sure you'll weave in some some travel to other places. I have not yet figured out what I'm going to do yet, outside of the trip to Berlin. So.
Well, you mentioned how it can be expensive for people from North America to go over to Europe, and vice versa, I'm sure. The biggest key I can say is book way ahead of time. I mean, I got my round trip to Europe last year for about the price of a last minute booking of domestic flight. So it can be done. Just book, 6 to 4 months in advance if you can.
Yeah. Or try to get your company to pay for it. That's the way to do it.
Well, yeah. Or both.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever you can get away with. All right, so let's get to our topic today. You've probably read the title already. It's Identity Management for Agentic AI. We've got with us today Tobin South. He's the co-chair of OpenID Foundation's AI Identity Management Community Group. So welcome to the show, Tobin.
It is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for taking the time. I feel like it's kind of like a mouthful. Identity Management for Agentic AI, and there's so much probably more behind it. Let's start a little bit, though, with kind of your background. So how did you get into this space of AI and identity? Take us through your origin story.
Yeah, I do find myself nowadays swimming in a sea of acronyms and jargon that is kind of terrifying to confront. I didn't intend to end up here. I have always been someone who's really interested in AI, and that was the scope of what I was really interested to work on when I joined MIT for my PhD. And kind of the broad question was, how do we build more robust security and safeguards on AI? And this is before ChatGPT, before it kind of ate the world. And over the course of my PhD, AI got better and better. Chatbots became a thing. And this idea of AI agents started popping up, where these crazy, wacky ChatGPT language models were going to go and do things and interact with services. And it just became remarkably apparent that access controls and identity was going to matter more and more as part of that. And so I started shifting my research towards that direction. And ever since then, that has been everything that has consumed my mind for the last year or so is identity access management for agents, the future of robust consumer marketplaces for agents, as well as the kind of enterprise questions around how we deploy agents.
Did your definition of AI change the first time you kind of became cognizant of things like a large language model and, specifically like a generative AI component? Because I feel like it was AI before. It was really like machine learning and sort of pattern matching, right, and things like that. And then I saw what OpenID was, I was like, oh my gosh, that's AI. I want that. I'm curious if you felt the same or felt differently.
Even for folks who had seen language models before, small language models that would generate a couple tokens, generate a couple words, give you a poem, I do think the ChatGPT moment still changed a lot of minds. And even beyond there, once tool calling became a thing, when language models could go and write a JSON that could then query an API, I think that really changed the minds of a lot of people very quickly in the space.
Yeah, now we've got things like vibe coding and all kinds of different things that people are doing. Tell me a bit about your role with OpenID. So tell me about the AI Identity Management Community Group, which is not a working group. I know there's a very clear differentiation, but tell us about that role that you're serving on there.
Yeah, so in January or February, we put out this paper on authenticated delegation and authorization. And delegated authority is this topic that people have often cared about, where maybe I want to delegate authority to an agent, to like a human agent, to a sub-process that's constrained. But with AI agents, this kind of blows up. We're going to have these chatbots that are non-deterministic, that can go out and do things for us. So we hosted a series of workshops at Stanford to get people talking about this and figure out what the future is. And it was clear there was just a need for a space, for a community to talk more and more about this. And so the OpenID Foundation put together a community group, which I now co-chair, to host these discussions and figure out what we need to build to make a safe future with agents.
So, Tobin, I wanted to ask you, or I wanted to go back. It's happening too quickly for me to get my follow-up question, but you talked about that ChatGPT moment, and I felt like it was when GPT-4 kind of came out. That seemed to be where everybody's eyes started to really open, and you'd hear about it, and you're like, "Oh, I've got to go out and check this out." It's like, whoa. Can't believe a computer's actually doing this. I thought it took an instruction and it kind of figured out how to spit out an answer, but this thing is much more so. Is that the moment for you?
I think there's this idea in AI of instruction tuning. So language models were just trained on spitting out text, not doing what you want them to do. Anyone who was a machine learning practitioner was constantly fighting against the idea that AI does what the data tells it, not what you want it to do. That was the whole art form of being a machine learning engineer. And instruction following changed that on its head. It created AIs that you could give it a natural language instruction and it would go and do a thing. And kind of from that moment onwards, we've seen this slow trend towards it being better and better at doing what you want it to do. To the point where today, you can tell it to do a thing and it might do it wrong. It might not use the right tools. It gets confused along the way. And that's why a lot of people kind of have this skepticism about AI agents, and they haven't had their ChatGPT moment yet, maybe. But to me, it seems like a really smooth trend where we're just getting better and better at having an AI do what you want it to do, no matter what that magically entails.
Yeah, I'm actually working on a project that, I guess, without getting into all the details, right? It's like a chat agent, or I feel like the term assistant is better, but let's say it's an agent that can have a conversation with a person to figure out what training makes sense for them. And it understands all the rules of hey, you got to do these things. These are some required trainings, things like that. And it kind of, where I really want to take it is, it can get to the point where it says, okay, Tobin, these are some courses that you should take. Would you like me to go onto your calendar and set a reminder? Or would you like me to go and register you for this course? And I think that's where the difference between a user and an agent identity really goes. So let me ask the question as simply as what's the difference between a user and an agent? But kind of understanding that I already realized what the difference is, I guess I'm wondering from an identity perspective.
Yeah, so I think to start off with, the term agent is terrible and has made all of our lives much harder. At least it keeps this podcast interesting. It does well on search engine optimization and it makes for good podcast titles. But in practice, when you're building systems, it's kind of confusing. And so AI can mean many different things. Sometimes it is a human being talking to an AI, more of an assistant context, and the AI is just helping them do something. And this is not that much different from a user interacting with a service. It's subtly different, but not massively. Then there is, I use an AI and ask it to go and do stuff, and I gesture towards what that stuff looks like, but I don't really tell it. This is more like vibe coding. My Claude code has access to MCP servers for GitHub and for Supabase, and it can spin up databases and use them as required. And this is no longer me really being in the loop. It's more of a delegated authority use case. And then there is AI, which kind of acts like a service account. It's a thing that runs in the background. I never touch it. And it goes and it just runs AI. I use a workflow that drafts replies to emails on my behalf based on a bunch of custom system prompts and access to services. And this is nothing like ChatGPT, right? From an identity management perspective, this is just a service account workload. And yet we kind of throw these all under the heading of agent, even if it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I feel like I've been hearing this comment a couple of times now recently where it's like, you think of agent as a bot. We spend our career keeping the bots out, and now we have to figure out how to let the bots in, or the right bots in, and let them do the right things. What do you think when you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept of a bot is a terrifying word to use nowadays. So one of the ways AI can interact with services is through the web. And like we've been trying to fight bots on the web for years and years and years. And now one of the things people want is like, oh, we want those bots. Because if I'm going to use ChatGPT's agent mode, which opens a browser and clicks buttons very slowly to buy stuff, if I block that bot, well, then people stop buying stuff on my website. And so then you go to whoever is building the bot blocking software and says, well, we don't want the bots, but we do want those bots. And this has led to this kind of blossoming of questions and solutions. WebBot Auth, which is a standard supported by Cloudflare, a browser-based to identify bots on the web. Payment questions, people doing X402, where 401 being the authorization needed error code, 402 being payment needed. And so there's all these wacky questions that people had written off over the last decade or two that now are coming back into question. It's a fun time to be in the internet.
I find it so fun that we are, we've spent the last decade trying to prove that we are not bots. Pick all the pictures of a hot dog, pick all the pictures of a motorcycle. And what are we doing? Now we're training our bots to do those things, on our behalf. That's just where we are.
If anything, I think AI is getting better at doing captures than I am.
Yeah, well, I'm not very good at it. A lot of times, like, pick all of the pictures with a bus. I'm like, that one with traffic there, is that a bus? I don't know. I usually get through those, so I figure I must not be answering that poorly.
For now. We might remove your human status soon.
So in my mind, there's different kinds of agents. And like I said, I like the term assistant because I could see a scenario where people are creating their own assistants. And so wondering from like an identity standpoint, when you're talking about AI agents and the ability for them to impersonate a person, right? And I think that's a big topic that's in the paper that you wrote. It's like ultimately that's what we're driving toward, right? Is the ability to set up an identity for this assistant, agent, bot, you call it what you want. Who's setting that up? Is that kind of coming with the package, or is the end user setting that up, or does it make sense for an administrator to set that up? And please tell me that we don't end up just put your username and password into this agent and we're just going to log in as you. I mean, isn't that like the worst case scenario?
That use case scenario keeps me up at night. So think of this back when we had human assistants. I like the term assistants. We've had human assistants for many years. And how would you give someone access to your services? You could just give them all your passwords. You give them your 1Password admin login. Not a great idea, but people do it. There's a version of that you can do with AI. But the question is, how much do you trust that human being? And so if you want to, have some modicum of security involved, you probably want to give them selective access to some services. And you probably want to know what actions are taken by them versus taken by you. Was the email sent by an assistant or was it sent by you? And the reason AI is interesting here is because this is just expanded. And, the scope of what can be done is expanded. More people are going to have these assistants helping them. And there's going to be, exponentially greater risks as these AIs do things faster than you can oversee. And that is why I think we really need to rethink identity for this. I think to kind of answer the question you actually asked of who is setting up this identity, I think a lot of the onus in a consumer application is on the consumer chatbots, people who are building these assistants. It's also on the web and standard setters to build robust notions of identity into that. And then in the enterprise use case, I think a lot of the really robust identity infrastructure comes into play. It's on enterprises to have sensible policies and procedures around identity access management for agents.
So when we talk about this, it's essentially this major topic that you took on in the paper, impersonation versus delegation. It's interesting because brought me back to what I see like in my early days in IT, where an executive would have an executive assistant. The executive didn't even know how to go in and do an access review, if he even had that at that point, but they didn't know. They would go in and like approve access. And I actually work for people where their assistant would print out their emails and put a stack of paper on their desk so they could go through their emails. Yeah, sad situation, but it's kind of the human version of this process now. I guess the question is like, what is the right way? Is that what you guys are driving toward? And is it to set up some kind of standard for like what is acceptable, what is best practice? Because I think from a practitioner standpoint, this is one of those areas where it's like, just tell us what to do.
Well, Jim, I can build you an AI agent that will print out all your emails so you can go back to handwriting them. I think that maybe that's a better world. We do need to stop using all these phones all the time. So maybe that'll.
I was going to say, please don't. Like, I just got an iPad. It's still in the box, but I'm going to just do all my emails there.
You know, I think a lot of people believe that AI agents are going to solve all of our problems. And I think much in the same way you think an iPad is going to make you better at replying to emails quickly, it's not. You're the problem. And it doesn't matter how good. I have an AI that writes emails for you, drafts emails. And yet this limiting reagent is still me clicking send, because I'm not going to let AI send emails on my behalf. Draft, okay, but send would get hairy very quickly. So your question, what is the right solution? I really wish I could come on this podcast and say to you that, like, here is a magic fix that will solve all your problems. That doesn't exist. It's not ever going to exist. And anyone trying to tell you it will is selling you a product. Instead, there's a bunch of steps we can do with current web identity infrastructure, delegated authority tooling, and enterprise identity infrastructure to make things ready for AI agents or be using them already. And you see this already in kind of the enterprise use case. You want to have an enterprise assistant, human assistant. We have some tools for that in whatever identity provider you use. Well, most of these identity providers are also setting up tooling around agents so that you can declare that something is an AI agent, that it is delegated on behalf of the human being. You can provision it and deprovision it in enterprise identity management tooling. And essentially everyone in this ecosystem is very aware that this is a problem and working towards it. And so I may not have one solution, but I'm promising you will get a lot of emails over the next year of people selling you solutions to fix them.
So we got that to look forward to at every conference. It's already starting to show up as like manage your agentic AI. You talked about that delegation, and that's going to be a big part of it, because the whole point of agentic AI is autonomy, right? It's doing things on your behalf. And so, of course, it has to have some level of delegated authority, but that delegation does not absolve, the governance, the consent, right, that needs to take place to say, yes, I do authorize Jeff Bot to go do these things. How do I keep track of that? Because that human oversight that is supposed to be there, typically over like a human level ID operating at human timescale, is going to be very different when you're talking about agentic, meaning millisecond timescale and hundreds, thousands maybe of these bots, maybe millions of these bots kind of all doing their own thing. Like, how do you manage that automation and make sure that's governed and that the right consent is in place for it to do those things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I really like that comment that AI is about autonomy. And I think the better AI is, the more autonomy you give it. Right? The dream of everyone building these highly effective, long-running AI agents is to give them one instruction or maybe an amorphous goal, and they continuously run and solve problems for you. That is the exciting part. That is what all of these evaluations for AI labs is built upon. And I think they're going to solve that. I think all of the AI models will get better at long time horizon tasks. The expression that has been going around Stanford recently is that AI is the worst it's ever going to be. And so if you don't believe that an agent is capable of continuously running a task effectively using tools right now, at some point in the future, whenever that is, you can believe whatever timeline you want, it will get better. But I think the blocker on that, the thing that's going to stop it being able to do stuff, is access, is permissions, human oversight, management of the access to services for AI agents is going to be the limiter on really cool agents.
So I find it interesting that you mentioned that, because we've been saying that for a while, like this is the worst it will ever be. I've had to change that saying though, because worst implies to some people good and bad. And so what I've said is like, this is the least capable AI will ever be, is right this second, as we're recording this. It will be better, or it'll be more capable in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? And so forth and so forth. So I do find it interesting that, hey, Jim, we're wrecking good circles here. We're thinking like Stanford folks.
I know. It's really eye-opening. Tobin, one thing that I kind of feel like I've found is some of the call centers that we dial into, like the AI is getting really, really good. Like some companies are underinvested, and there should be a wall of shame for that, because you get on and it's like your AI is garbage, and you just say, I need to speak to a human. I need to speak to a human. But there are others where they're actually good. But I feel like no matter how good they are, eventually they hit some kind of guardrail where it's like the AI agent just isn't going to solve that problem for you. It's like, hey, I got billed twice last month and I need you to refund me the money. I was like, okay, well, this could be a fraud scenario, so we're actually going to forward you to a person. And why do I bring all that up? Because I kind of feel like if you can say, okay, here's Tobin, he's a human being, and he's got these 5 agent identities, and those agents go off and do something, you almost potentially could say, well, I didn't know what that agent was going off to do, right? Like if there's not enough logging and accountability behind those agents, so you almost have to, in addition to just logging it, but you have to have the right guardrails. And maybe it's a matter of having the right authorization so that it can't do things that you wouldn't expect it to do. But I also think there's process guardrails. And so identity management and identity security bump up to, it's got, some of this has got to fall back to the business process.
Yeah. I think the element that you're describing with respect to liability is a huge, huge issue here. We have a bunch of work ongoing at Stanford in collaboration with part of the Stanford Law School on what liability looks like in AI. The law has a concept of agency, not to be confused with AI agents, but the idea that an individual can take actions, and if you have the agency to take an action, you may have the liability as part of that. And it's very unclear when you tell ChatGPT or Claude to go and do a thing, and then it does that thing kind of wrong, right? You go and say, buy me a new couch, and it doesn't have enough money to buy a couch, so it remortgages your house in order to pay for it. Who's responsible for that loan, right? Like that's a consequential action. And so I deeply believe that the way organizations and business processes are structured is someone needs to be fireable for anything to work. And if you just have AI doing a bunch of things and something goes wrong, who do you yell at? You can't really yell at ChatGPT. Yeah, I mean, you can. It will accept it. It will apologize, but it doesn't feel the same.
You're right. So, I did make a mistake.
Right. You don't want that. It doesn't fight back enough.
Right. Yeah.
So I think guardrails matter there. Part of guardrails is this alignment problem, making sure that AI stays on task. Part of it is just limiting its access so it can't remortgage your house. And then part of it is understanding, when you design AI systems and assistants, where the risks and the liabilities are in that business process automation.
Well, this is sort of like the $1 trillion question is, who is responsible for the actions of the agent, right? Ultimately, probably a human somewhere, but they're not going to be able to keep up with their own agents, let alone all the agents within an organization. So let me try to spin this into a way that we can make this helpful for people listening. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to vibe code, an app that prints out all of Jim's emails and sends it, via postal service to him. So to do that, I'm going to have to do some things around agentic AI and maybe some other things, right, to tap into. I want to talk about MCP in a little bit, but I'm doing these kind of things. So what do I do as a developer or an enterprise or even a consumer to say, how do I get ready for this from an identity management perspective?
Yeah, so every tool that lets you plug in a tool such as using the model context protocol and something like Claude, or if you're using Claude Code, accessing different tools, there are usually interfaces designed for humans, and then there are interfaces designed for AI agents. And to give a concrete example, if you're vibe coding, you like Claude Code, and you want to use GitHub, there are two different ways you can use GitHub to make PRs, merge them, manage your commits, manage your branches. And one of them is the command line. You can just, Claude knows how to write a GitHub command. And the other one is an MCP server. Now, this is like lesser known about that MCP server, but if you use the GitHub MCP server, it has explicit restrictions on what can and cannot be done. And it will make sure that when PRs are made, it's tied to an agent identity. GitHub is tracking when something comes through MCP, when it comes through an AI agent, as opposed to coming through your command line, which looks like you. That is one of those benefits of using the right interface for AI. And I think this analogy can apply across a bunch of different tools. There's a bank that has an MCP server that will let you read banking information and automate your finances. Now, it's read-only. Everyone can remain calm. We're not vibe coding our banks yet, I hope. But having that interface and declaring it up front, especially if you're building AI tools, I think is super helpful, not just for you in your own management, but to offer to your consumers, to other folks using the tools you build, that something is AI and work towards this better identity infrastructure.
So talk to us a little bit about MCP. Just if you could just kind of like start with the level set of what MCP is, and then talk about identity and authorization and how that plays in, how that works through MCP.
Brilliant. We enter the three-letter acronym territory. Okay, so the Model Context Protocol, MCP, is a protocol that came out in November, December last year, has rapidly taken over the world. Every company I know is thinking about their MCP strategy. And I think the worst way to think about it is as a wrapper around APIs. People are used to the concept of an API. You have some resource, you have some SaaS app or Gmail, whatever, that you want to expose to someone building something to allow them to perform actions. This has always had notions of scopes. Often they involve API keys or an OAuth flow where users consent to give access to services, to resources. And MCP behaves as a kind of first approximation, as a wrapper in front of that makes it really easy to connect to an AI agent. So it kind of operates in natural language. It's this translational barrier between a natural language interface that's happening in Claude or ChatGPT and the API, which is in more of a machine readable format. Now,
so basically, so let's just make sure I understand, but if you're
of course
trying to develop an AI agent to do something like create that calendar reminder, the MCP gives you a simple, or should I say a common way to interface with the email system. Is that right?
Yeah. So in this instance, you already have a Google Calendar API, but that's super painful to plug into Claude. Like if you go to the ChatGPT website right now, there's no way to give it access to that, something you've custom built in terms of sending emails. But if you make it an MCP server, now you can add that to ChatGPT. And now, each morning when you wake up and you want to, have your like friendly morning conversation with your friend ChatGPT, you can go and send some emails while you're at it. And so it's just this connective tissue that lets you write instructions in natural language. You literally, when you build an MCP server, write text that explains how to use different APIs, how to use different tools to connect to resources.
So practically speaking, if I'm creating enterprise applications, am I getting my MCP server? I guess I probably have options, but what is going to be the typical enterprise use case? Are they going to have a SaaS MCP server that has all the plugins that you could possibly want? Or is this something that I'm going to stand up? Or am I going to get it from my AI large language model provider?
So I really like the internal enterprise example use case. We can talk about external use cases later if we want. But you as an employee have a bunch of extremely boring tasks you perform on a day-to-day basis that involve opening a website and clicking a series of buttons in the same manner every single day. We all do. And there are, in many cases, APIs that could do that for you. But you are not going to build button clicking automations because you're busy clicking buttons. And you've only got so much time in the day. What MCP lets you do within a company is take those operations, which can be done programmatically, and put them in a natural language interface. So wrap them in an MCP, plug that into your company employees' chatbots of choice, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Goose, Cursor. And then the human being can go and say, check my compliance report. It can pull relevant information. It can, write relevant things, change state externally, and do those workflows that you always had to do by hand, but now do them with a chatbot. And as you find yourself doing these repeated chatbot operations, right? I always do the same thing. Check the Vercel deployment for any logs, pull it in, suggest a fix, write that code, make a new PR. And if you keep seeing this happen repeatedly, now you can build a semi-autonomous agent that goes and just does this workflow repeatedly. And I like that mental model of automating you as a human being by replacing you with an AI.
I kind of think of like the Matrix and the keymaster. So, and this is just my feeble brain trying to wrap my head around this. And I think of each door that the keymaster has a key to is a portal into another world. In the MCP context of MCP, maybe somewhat redundant right there with the word context, but it's how, a individual, a thing, an agent, a bot, or whatever it may be, can traverse boundaries in a controlled method. That's the way I kind of look at it. It's like, okay, you got Neo and the agents going through, a bunch of portal doors kind of in the Matrix, and they shut them behind them. And when they're shut behind, no one else can kind of flow through it or, go back into it, those sorts of things. Am I crazy? Or, did the Matrix invent MCP?
I'm not sure I'm willing to go on record to say the Matrix invented MCP. I think David from Anthropic might be a bit annoyed at that claim. But I do think that mental model makes sense. It is giving you this portal to things that have already existed. These resources, these APIs always existed. But now making them accessible to both AI and through AI humans in a really interesting way.
I want you to put your Nostradamus hat on a little bit here, right? And talk about MCP. Is this like the next SAML? Or is that not a good analogy? Like, I'm just thinking with SAML, you got this humongous adoption and like there's all these like IDPs that are SAML enabled and you can plug in and you can have single sign-on to hundreds or thousands of applications overnight. And I'm wondering if MCP is going to be that, because I think with SAML, it got to the point where it was like, if you're going to provide a web application online, you pretty much need to support SAML if you're going to sell to enterprises, because unless you're like the only one in the market, you're going to need that. And I'm wondering if like MCP becomes that standard. Do they just publish APIs and let somebody else worry about doing the MCP layer?
Yeah, I'm not sure SAML is the protocol I'd pick, but I totally agree with that analogy of I think that's what it's going to become. Maybe it's closer to REST in that it's a thing that everyone decides we should start doing and then everyone does. and then we all get annoyed at the limitations of it, and it causes a constant pain for developers.
Speaking of pain, they're coming behind you to get you.
Yeah, no, I've said something wrong. I'm in San Francisco on Market Street, which is not the calmest place on planet Earth, but it is where all the MCPs are being built. So I really think employees at organizations are going to expect, if you're selling them a SaaS app, that SaaS app is accessible to people who want to just operate out of a chatbot. We work a lot with folks at Cursor who build cool apps, and they love MCP at Cursor. And one of many coding agents, all the coding agent folks do. And they want to vibe code their whole lives. They just want to sit and have AI do all the things. And so they really want all of their services to have MCP servers so that they can, stay inside of Cursor for the rest of their lives and never have to go and open a website.
Well, that's that's a monetary driver too, right? Because that MCP is a two-way door. If we're doing consumption-based from a product perspective, that's how you adequately control and secure those things to make sure that, obviously the data they're getting is what it should be and so forth. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, of course you want to build that. It's almost like that should be a function that is just standard at this point. Or is it too soon to call it standard?
I think we are now at a point, or let me give you this, in like December 20th of 2026, a standard. There are working groups. Essentially every company that I know has someone working on MCP. And I deeply believe that there will be a product push over the next year for everyone who wants to be AI forward to support something. And so we'll see if this collapses. I mean, look, AI may be one big bubble, but I think this protocol is here to stay. At least as a really clean, robust way to communicate that tooling is designed for AI and optimize the agent experience, right? APIs are designed for a developer experience. Your website is designed for humans. We need an interface that's optimized for agents.
So talk to me a little about the concept of recursive delegation and scope attenuation, because these are things that I picked up from the white paper. And I should say, we're going to have the white paper linked in our show notes so people can kind of go and read that. It's like 30 pages. It's very in-depth, right? That sort of thing. But talk to me about what those things are and why should I care about them as an identity person?
Those are a lot of big words, frankly, very scary. Let's unpack them. Okay, delegation. When you want a task done, you delegate it to something or someone or some agent. So I ask Claude, my favorite AI assistant, go read all of my emails and find what needs to be addressed. Great, that's one step of delegation. Claude's now handling everything. Now, for one of those emails, I need to go retrieve information, which maybe requires me to ping someone or go do other stuff. And so Claude has this idea of sub-agents where it can spin up a new AI agent. Now, really all that's happening is a sub-process is being spawned in a system with a clean system prompt, right? So a lot of AI is about context management. If you have a lot of nonsense in your context window, AI gets confused. And so it makes a lot of sense to spin up a sub-agent with a reduced context. It's focused on exactly what it needs to do. And it can go out and do that and retrieve relevant information. So now I have delegated to an AI, which is delegated to an AI. Now let's take an enterprise use case that now this second agent needs to orchestrate something in Salesforce, needs to pull from a CRM. Well, Salesforce has Agentforce, their whole big agent strategy. And so it's now going to send a natural language request to an external system that we don't control, and which, Agentforce will go and it'll pull the CRM and find someone that might be relevant. And then it can send it back to the sub-agent, which can send it back to the sub-agent, which can send it back to me. Now, this is cool. It helps with context management, but this recursive delegation, these multiple steps of delegation, each one abstracts you, the original person, further and further away from what's going on, and means you have less control over what's actually happening. And so I might give my main Claude access to all my tools, but I don't necessarily want everything that Claude creates to go do a task, to have access to all my banks, all my text messages, all my emails. And so we really need robust attenuation of scope so that when AIs go and use other AIs, they don't just give all the permissions to the next AI. And that's what we mean about scope attenuation for recursive delegation, a terrifying sentence.
That is like a $25 word. If you're playing Scrabble, you probably just won right there, or Words with Friends, or whatever your word choice is for there.
If anyone ever plays Scrabble and gets attenuation, please email me immediately.
There you go. Open invite. I'll put your LinkedIn in our show notes. You heard it here first. The gauntlet has been thrown down for a challenge. All right. So we're like 45 minutes here, and so I want to start to wrap things up. But what I want to do is offer the people listening some nugget that they can take away. So if I'm listening to this and I remember one thing that came out of this entire conversation around agentic AI identity management, what is it that I should be taking away from this conversation? Just remember this one thing.
We don't need to reinvent the entire identity stack of the internet to solve agents. And we're not going to. But each step of the existing identity stack, whether it's web identities and logging in, whether it's SAML, whether it's SCIM, and identity management for agents with your identity provider, each one of those steps is going to require some incremental improvements to support agents. And we're not going to change the world entirely, but everyone is going to have a responsibility to upgrade their systems to support agents. And then I think we're all going to be okay.
There we go. You make it sound so simple. Like this is it. This is just how we solve it. So you said originally you didn't have, a way to solve it. It sounds like you just did.
I think we have so many fun incremental problems to solve that whether we have AGI or not, we're all going to stay employed for a while as identity management professionals.
Yeah, judging by some of the outputs that I get out of the tools that I use, like, okay, yeah, we're not quite there yet. But, this is the least capable it will ever be right this second. It's just going to get more and more capable. Now it's on us to figure out how do we make it secure, how do we use it appropriately, right? All that good stuff. So as long as I can, use, things like Sora and Gemini to like make stupid videos, I'm cool.
Yeah, I like it's neither good nor bad, but it will get more capable. Those Sora videos might become increasingly unhinged, but they'll be incredible definition and quality.
Yeah, if you have not checked out the Sora app from OpenAI, it is definitely very, very weird.
If you've not checked it out, don't. Yeah. Just stay away. Yeah.
It is 100% AI slop. And if you're into that, it's great. If you're not, you're going to be like, what the heck is this? So Tobin, you've been super generous with your time. I want to take us out on a lighter note. And so I have a couple options. I was going to kind of ask you about Australia and, something about Adelaide, maybe like that people generally don't know about. But I want to go more the coffee route. And this is what Jim was alluding to earlier on of, providing value. I personally do not drink coffee. I love the aroma, can't stand the flavor. And I will try coffee maybe like once every year, a couple years, and it's just a quick check-in. Yep, still don't like it. So my caffeine of choice is generally a cola of some sort. But I want to ask you, because as I was doing some, cyber stalking of you to like get some background, before the interview, you mentioned somewhere that you're kind of like a coffee guy. So I want to know in all your travels around the world, what is or where is or who has the best coffee that you've ever had?
I have such a strong affinity for coffee. I think my PhD was fully powered by coffee. I continue, in order to get my job done, consume inordinate amounts of caffeine. I have a strong belief that as well, the derivative matters. You got to keep drinking just a little bit more every day, which doesn't work at the macro scale of one's life. But being Australian and growing up in one of the coffee havens of the world, I am always in search of good coffee and always disappointed. San Francisco, where I live, has many great cafes. I can't knock them, but it's unreliable. When you travel to Europe, they make coffee, but it's not the same as the flat whites I care about back home. And when you fly back in to Australia, usually via Sydney, because there is no direct flight to my hometown, you land in Sydney Airport and you're immediately faced with 5 different cafes in the terminal, each of which has award-winning coffee. And so Australia will always have the best cafe culture in my heart. But if you are in San Francisco, Third Wheel Coffee is my local cafe, and there's a 50-50 chance you might see me there at 8 a.m. every single morning. So there's my offer to folks.
All right, so go to Australia, go to Sydney for the Opera House, and stay for the coffee in the airport. Like that's a bucket list item. Jim, I know you're a coffee person. You seem like you're itching, to get into the conversation. I don't know if that's just the caffeine or you're just excited, but what is your favorite coffee?
Maybe a little bit of both, because I do drink coffee throughout the day. I'm more prepared to say what I don't like. You know me, Jeff. I mean, is that any surprise at all? So
I already bashed on the poor Apple girl from the commercial, so go ahead, bash coffee. That's fine too.
Yeah, I don't like flavored coffee. Like if you say, oh, like this is a caramel coffee or something like that, I'm like, no, that is horrible. It's ruined. I think the weird thing is, like, I spent my whole life drinking different coffees, African coffee or different places around the world, trying to find, like, okay, what is my favorite roast of coffee or favorite beans, favorite roast? You know what I come back to in my old age is the good old Arabica bean. 100% Arabica coffee. And whether you make it into an espresso or you make it into a drip coffee, I just really think there's a reason that became the most popular bean in the world. And it's because it's the best. It's got it's a medium flavor. And I think that's me. Like I tried both extremes. And I ended up back where I started as a teenager drinking, Arabica Colombian coffee. So I'll go with Colombian coffee for 200, please.
All right, coffee crossfire. Tobin, your thoughts?
I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's a great coffee. It's so good to the point where I lived with a machine learning engineer who had quit caffeine entirely, and yet still imported really high quality Arabica beans just to make decaf coffee on what must have been $5,000 or so of espresso machine equipment for no caffeine at all, which is a little insane, but it's tasty. It works.
Okay, so Jim, you mentioned the bean, but like, where is the best coffee? Like, what's the best coffee you ever had? Give me a location.
So, I don't know. Like, I don't have like that one experience. I'd say my house. Like, I keep coming to this. Yeah, I keep coming here and having coffee all the time. Actually, I don't have my really good espresso machine anymore. I've got like a Nespresso machine, which, people probably out there are like grumbling. I know it's a little bit of weak sauce, except convenience is very important when you have a job where you've got calls like stacked up back to back, and it's like, oh, this call ended 3 minutes early. I have time to go make myself a coffee. So yeah, that's what I have. But I tend toward more local places than the big chains. And some big chains are really good, but a lot of times they're very disappointing. So there's a couple local places around me here in Sturgis, South Dakota. You don't think of it as the coffee capital of the world, and it's not. I could tell you I've had Turkish coffee. I've had coffee in all over Europe. They've all been wonderful. Nothing stood out to me as like, oh, that's the best place to go for coffee. But yeah, there's a lot of them.
Okay, so send your angry emails to Jim on LinkedIn. Defend your coffee, people. That's the challenge right there.
Everyone's got to have a hill to die on. I think it's a great hill.
That's look, we all have opinions. It's like, change my mind. Opinions can change the facts. I'll think about it. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe someday I will like coffee, but for now, it's still just the aroma, and that's it for me. So, all right, let's go ahead and leave it there for this week. Tobin, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I hope you'll come back, especially if things kind of develop in this agentic AI, IAM world, and like what should be you'll be thinking about as I go along. And I hope to see you at an identity conference coming up, maybe at Gartner, or Identiverse, or EIC, or something along those lines. But thank you so much for being with us. I will have in our show notes a link to the paper that is out there, as well as your LinkedIn profile, so people can either defend or attack coffee preferences or whatever it may be. Please be polite.
Please do.
Yeah. And we'll go ahead and leave it there for this week. So you can find us on the web, idacpodcast.com. Like and subscribe. Hit the YouTube channel. We recently crossed over 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So thank you for that. Again, we don't do any advertising. It's all word of mouth. And so we appreciate everyone supporting us. So with that, we'll go ahead and leave it for this week. Thanks, everyone, for watching and or listening. And we'll talk with you all in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.